This video is not about learning how to have a conversation, because we all know how to do that to some extent. But this video is about how to carry and transform a surface level conversation to a deeper and more meaningful conversation. And it's through this transition that gets people to really open up to us, to trust us, and to love us, because it's through deeper conversations that enable deeper connection, and it builds beautiful relationships. And the reason why relationship building is so important is because relationships is directly linked to our happiness. Harvard did an 85-year-long study sharing that the people that are the happiest are not necessarily the people that are the smartest, the most successful, the richest. They are the people who have the most high-quality relationships. So people that have the most high-quality relationships tend to live longer, so they live up to 20 years longer. They also are more likely to be financially successful, and they're happier. So let's get into the video. All right, now let's talk about mindset, because before we get into any sort of conversation, it's really important to know these 3 mindset shifts. So the first one is you have to stay detached somehow. And if you are not very used to having a lot of conversations, this may be the hardest thing for you. You do not have to be liked. It is not important to be liked in this world. And the more that you have the courage to be disliked, the more that you will give yourself more permission to be yourself. And naturally, when you have that permission from yourself to be yourself, then naturally your personality, your humor, your beauty just comes out and it radiates like crazy. And that is true freedom, knowing that you don't need to have people to like you. And another thing is that the more that you treat somebody like they're more important to you, when you give them way more excess importance than they actually have. And a lot of the times when we do this at networking events or at coffee chats, we tend to put this person that we're talking to on a pedestal. And when they notice that you do that, you automatically have a disadvantage, and they automatically see you as someone less. Now, it's not their fault. It's because you gave them excess importance. So that's why it's so important that it doesn't matter what they think of you. The most important thing is whether they like you or not, you are still at peace. Now that is true detachment. Number 2 on the list with mindset shifts is love yourself and accept yourself unconditionally. If you have ever noticed yourself ever slip up, maybe you say something wrong or you end up stuttering and you just can't stop, have you ever noticed that when you beat yourself up even more, you end up getting even more anxious, and then you end up slipping up even more, and then you end up stuttering even more, and then therefore you start freaking out because you're going beet red? And that's where self-love and unconditional self-acceptance comes in. Have you ever talked to somebody that is so hard on themselves, and you can tell that they're just not really comfortable with not being perfect, and they're so focused on wanting to put their best foot forward that they get so anxious at the same time? If you were on the receiving end of that, if you're in a conversation with them, you can probably imagine yourself feeling a bit more rigid than usual. And it's because people who fail to accept themselves are usually people that are harder to talk to. And accepting yourself is so key and so vital to having deeper connections with people, because you also want them to be more relaxed around your presence. You want your energy to feel inviting and loving. So don't allow a little slip up to cause you to go downhill into making a really good impression. Accept yourself, because it's okay to stutter. It's okay to slip up. A lot of very famous people, when they go into these really big talks, they slip up sometimes, and they don't beat themselves over it because they know it's natural. It is very human. So be fully accepting of who you are. And on top of that, If you catch yourself in a conversation where you are being disrespected or you feel very uncomfortable, again, rule of thumb, unconditional self-love. If you need to walk out of a conversation, do so immediately. Do so because you love yourself. Don't do it because you are afraid of might happen. It's not about being afraid that you need to walk away, because I'm sure we get ourselves into conversations where it might feel really awkward, but I'm talking about the times where you are getting disrespected and, they're not treating you right, they are not respecting your presence at all. Usually I like to make just a clear exit and I just leave, right? You don't owe anyone anything. The third mindset shift when it comes to really powerful conversations is that you are not in this conversation to prove that you're the best in some way. It's actually to prove your understanding of the other party. There's this huge misconception that we need to prove that we're the funniest, or we're the wittiest, or we're the smartest. We are, the most eloquent, and whatever pressures that we give ourselves to be the best at. And usually it's those expectations of ourselves that cause us to be more awkward, to be more shy, to be more anxious. But what if the rule this whole entire time was to prove your understanding of the other person? If you think about a person in your life that you know that when you're going through something terrible, you just want to talk to that person about it. And think about, is that person the funniest person you know? Is that person the smartest person you know? Is that person the most eloquent person you know? And the answer is probably no. But what do you love about them? It's the fact that when you talk to them, they just feel so comforting to be around, and they're just so easy to talk to, and they just empathize with you on a deeper level. And that's what the best conversationalists know, that's how you engage in a really high quality conversation. It's also not about being the most agreeable person, because you can have your own values and you should stick with your own opinions. But when it comes to conflicting agreements, which we'll talk about later, it's about understanding their POV and giving them empathy that you understand where they're coming from. All right, now part 2 is body language, and how to use body language to exude your charisma and to allow people to trust you and want to engage with you more. So body language is actually more important than what you say. And it doesn't matter how interesting you may sound, if you don't have the right body language to deliver that message, it's not going to come off very strong. So number 1 is when you're in a conversation and you're getting to know somebody, always laugh and integrate some sort of laughter in between the conversation. And laughter is essentially an invitation that you want to connect with the other person. And naturally, when they laugh back, it shows that they also want to connect with you. And it's a really beautiful exchange in connecting on a more lighthearted level. And the second thing when it comes to body language is to use hand gestures. And hand gestures is something that, it may not seem like it's very important, but if I put my hands behind my back, you probably can't see it right now, but there's almost a lack of flow in what I say. And you're not really engaging as much because my hands are still, right? And there's no expression in how I'm portraying myself. And this is also very much linked to old tribal days, where if we met someone new, the first thing that we see is not their face, not their eyes, not their nose, not their mouth. It's actually their hands, because our hands show whether we're holding a spear or we're holding berries. And our brains are so wired to see that way. So we want to make sure that when our hands are out, that people see our hands, and therefore it creates more safety. Being able to move your hands around really shows that you want to engage, and it enunciates your words more. So pay attention to any of the TED Talks that you watch. It's the people that make hand gestures that are usually the ones that are most engaging. And people who don't, put their hands behind their back, they're usually not the type of people that you want to listen to. So hands out. So the last part is all about content. So what makes up a really amazing conversation? The best conversationalists tend to ask 10 to 20 times more questions than the regular person. So it is so imperative to ask questions. And you don't have to think about very deep questions all the time. Asking questions can be a very quick response, like, oh, tell me more. Oh, that's so interesting. Can you tell me more about that? That is so interesting that you have this hobby. What got you into it? And these can be very quick questions that don't necessarily take out so much energy to think about. And asking questions is not an interrogation. You're not acting like a Quizlet cue card, and you're not constantly throwing in different questions every time. It's through understanding flow and intuition and asking questions that help them dig deeper into understanding who they are. And having deeper conversations is all about creating greater depth and inviting them and creating a safer environment for them to dig deeper and to understand who they really are. When you're starting off a new conversation, either with someone that you know or you don't know, asking questions can help you identify what kind of conversation you are in. And now there are 3 different types of conversations that you could be in. The first one is something that is solutions oriented. These kinds of conversations are essentially when you are either in a heated argument in a workplace, or if you're in a personal relationship and there's some sort of conflict going on, or if your friend is dealing with a decision and it's really hard for them to choose. Especially in very heated arguments, people tend to want to say things that really deflect any sort of responsibility about what they feel, and they try to make it about you. Never take things as face value. So don't just assume that just because they are saying something, don't take that literally. And instead, ask deeper questions to get to the root cause as to why they feel this way about the situation. And the best question that you can ask is, why is this important to you? So for an example, if your boyfriend didn't want you to go to a Taylor Swift concert and he was giving you a lot of trouble for it, instead of getting them to, say all these horrible things about you, it gives them a chance to reflect and think, this is important because I just haven't been feeling valued by you. I don't feel like a priority anymore, and I feel like we never spend time together. And through these deeper questioning routines and getting into the habit of asking questions that understand on a deeper level, it's all about cutting through the surface level distractions and to get to the root to what they're really feeling and what they really want from you. And sometimes these things can be really hard to admit. So asking questions around what these layers are is really going to help you understand the person, and it's going to connect you guys on a deeper level. So the second type of conversation is emotional conversations. And this is typically when a friend comes to us because they're dealing with something difficult. And first instinct is that when people come to us with a problem, a lot of the times when we go into a conversation like this, we tend to assume that it is a solutions-oriented conversation. But we can clarify this by asking, do you want to be helped? Do you want to be heard? Or do you want to be hugged? And usually that helps clarify your goal, and it helps them set an intention around what they want this conversation to be like. Your goal is not to fix their problems, but your goal is to empathize with them. And a really great way to empathize is to repeat what they said to you in your own words. So a lot of therapists do this, but it's such a powerful way to connect with someone, especially if they're going through a lot, because it shows that you are listening and it shows that you care for them. And sometimes caring for that person through just active listening is already so much better than being in a solutions-oriented mode, because just through simple understanding, they may get to their conclusion immediately. Sometimes it may alleviate that problem right away, or maybe they'll come to their own senses hearing it through your voice and saying, oh my gosh, I really have been in this cycle, or I really have been, making the wrong decision. And it's not always about shoving solutions down their throats and getting them and forcing them to do those things, because they're not gonna listen and they can't hear you. And sometimes just repeating what they said and being there for them is enough love that it allows them to make a different decision. The third types of conversations that we can have is called social conversations. And social conversations are all about bringing surface level conversations to a deeper level. And we can do this with a lot of existing relationships that we have, or even new people that we meet. And these conversations are so powerful because it takes a little bit of courage on our end to be able to pop vulnerable questions sometimes, because we don't really know if they're going to be receptive to it or not. And that's why asking questions and inching a little bit closer to vulnerability can help you gauge whether this person wants to have a deeper conversation with you, or whether you should just stick to a surface level conversation. The goal of these conversations is to target their values and their own identity and what they stand for and what they're really passionate about. Because when you talk about somebody's passions, they will not be able to shut up about it. And that's a really great hack. You talk about and you keep asking and you dive deeper and you get very curious about their passions. And on top of that, you want to know how that person came to be who they are today. And you can ask questions to see, what shaped them? What kind of stories have they had that shaped them into the person they are today? Another thing is that vulnerability is such a powerful trait, and vulnerability really gets people to listen. And it's these vulnerable questions that help people unlock and really think about you in a different light. And vulnerability actually helps people open up so much more. And it's not about opening about, what was your worst childhood trauma? If the conversation goes there, that's great if you want it to go there. But it could be something as simple as, what made you go into law school? Was there something that happened in your childhood that made you or inspired you to pursue law? It's asking questions that open up and invite them to see who they are on a deeper level. So this is the end of the video of how to have higher quality relationships through having better conversations. And every conversation you have, whether it is surface level or deep, it's all an opportunity for you to grow more intuitive with your own ability to communicate. And it takes practice. It is not something that you are born into. It is something that takes continuous practice, a lot of failure, and sometimes a lot of slip-ups. And I've had so many myself, and I know that the best communicators are the ones that usually have been through and made a lot of mistakes in the past. So just be kind to yourself, just go out there and try to have random conversations with strangers, and you'll be so surprised with how much you'll change over time and how many high quality relationships you'll end up gaining through this new courage. So thank you so much. And if you really like this video, please share it with your friends and like it and subscribe to my channel. I do all things self-development and I love talking about things like this. So I'd love to see you in my next video. Thank you so much. Bye.